It is Tuesday afternoon, 4 p.m. in Switzerland, and it's Space Café Web Talk time. Our Space Café Web Talk, 33 minutes with Dr. Agnieszka Lukaszczyk, will begin soon. Thanks for joining us for our talk today about if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. How cooperation in space can foster progress on Earth. As always, we appreciate your participation and ongoing feedback. Any responses of you is very valuable for us and helps us to improve. I'm Torsten Kriening, your host today and publisher of SpaceWatch.Global. As you know, we are a Switzerland-based online platform for information in and about space and new space activities in a geopolitical context. I know many of you are already familiar with our website, our bi-weekly and daily newsletters, and the Space Café podcasts. And the latest episode was released last week, featured a fantastic Professor Joellen Russell. It's an absolute must listen. And she talks about the oceans, the pollutions in the ocean and pollutions in space and the similarities. And it's an absolute fantastic talk and will hopefully inspire you to think further on that. And for all our fans of audio content, we also started with the Space Café Radio, where we talk with interesting people on the road, on shows and conferences. And our first episodes are online on our website, such Chiara's interview at the Unidia conference, and now also Emma Gatti's interview mini-series with the Mars mission, the Mars analog mission, of course, of the ÖVF. We also keep our fan shop open online for you to support us actively and become a space watcher. And by getting your t-shirt, you help us to continue our work. If you have missed any of our previous talks, we have an archive available on our website, in the event section and on YouTube. And today we mark our 80th edition of our 33 minutes Earth Space Café. So Agnieszka, it's a very special moment today. We also like to thank Planet for their support for our show today. So my guest today does not need a big introduction nor an explanation why I invited her. She is well known in the industry and one of the very, very inspiring people I really admire. With that, a very warm welcome, Dr. Agnieszka Lukaszczyk. And I hope I pronounced your name in an almost okay way. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Torsten, for this very, very nice welcome. And I'm particularly feel special that I'm on this, like your anniversary here, the 80th. Thankfully, I'm not that old yet.
I was about to say, you just, I hope you didn't say it's your 80th birthday. No,
not quite. But very, very happy to be here. And you are doing very well with my name, I have to say. It is, it is a struggle for most people who are not Polish. So well done.
So maybe the close proximity for me living near the Polish border here in Berlin might help. However, so let me just briefly introduce you before we then go into our talk. I mean, Agnieszka is the Vice President of Governmental Affairs EMEA at Planet right now, and she is a Polish-American national that has worked at the European Commission. She was at the Brussels office. She was the Brussels office director of the Secure Vault Foundation. In addition, she was a former chairperson and former executive director at the Space Generation Advisory Council. She also worked at the European Space Policy Institute as a research fellow and serves as the Vice President Europe of the World Space Week and sits on the board of directors for Women in Aerospace Europe. I think that can go on and on, but most important, I think she obtained a PhD in space security at the Polish University of War Studies. And I mean, there's so much more to say about your really inspiring career, but we leave that to another time because today I would like to focus on something else. Planet made headlines week by week this year, all in a very positive context. I would say. And in May, I had the pleasure of talking with Will Marshall, one of the founders of Planets, about the European Green Deal and the Carbon Mapper project. Could you give us a quick update or an overview what happened since summer and, of course, last week with this big event?
Yeah, many things have happened. So it's indeed a very busy time for us. They say for a reason, that these new space companies are very agile. I think we are an example of that. And it's not always, of course, that we have all these great things to announce, but it's been busy in the last few months. So one of the big announcements that we have made this summer is that we are going public, which you probably heard. So Planet is going to be a publicly traded company, which means that we're kind of grown-ups, We won't be able to call ourselves a startup anymore, and we need to get a little bit more serious, but we're still going to be the same in terms of our mission and the way we do business, but just a little bit more responsible. And last week we had our Explore conference. This is a big annual conference that we have once a year. Normally it is in person, but of course, due to obvious reasons, it was virtual. But we had over 6,000 people register, which is crazy, and we were able to broadcast in 3 different time zones, which was very good because that way we were able to get a big audience. So we were broadcasting in somewhere like in one of the U.S. time zones, one of the European time zones, one of the Asian time zones, and it was also translated into, I think, 4 languages, including German. So just because we want to really raise awareness and reach as many people as we can, we've made a lot of announcements there. But one of the 2 biggest announcements were we announced a new constellation of satellites called Pelican. Which is very, very exciting. They are VHR, very high resolution, and they're going to be something that we haven't had before yet. So very exciting. And another thing is that we announced data fusion. So we did that actually last year. We announced our fusion product, and that was fusing planet data, planet scope data with Sentinel-2. And that has proven really a game changer, that it's such a powerful data set if you merge those 2 instead of just working with one or the other. So we say 1 + 1 = 3 when you put those 2 together. And now we have added another component, which we announced last week. We've added SAR data, which and that would come from Sentinel-1. And that is really going to, I don't know, 1 + 1 + 1 = 5. I don't know how the math is done, but it's going to be definitely more than the sum of its parts. So because when we add the SAR component, we're going to be able to look through clouds, fog, and we're just going to get a lot more information. So we're very, very excited with that.
No, that sounds fantastic. And I mean, of course, we covered these announcements also, being a partner of our St. Copernicus. I mean, also your competitor, and we will talk about competitors later on, our ICEYE made it into this framework of Copernicus. And I think using all this data together is really something what brings us forward. But can you tell us a bit more, the nitty-gritty details about the Pelican constellation? So
I know it's like the best kept secret right now. So there's only so much I can tell you, simply because we're still releasing stuff, and I can't really go much more beyond the information that was already released publicly. But it's going to be VHR. It's going to have the highest resolution and the highest revisit time to what we have currently. So if as you know, SkySat is 50 centimeter. This is going to be higher than that. Can't really tell you what it's going to be. And we think that the revisit time is going to be 10 times even more than SkySat if all goes well. So those announcements will be made very, very soon. We're still testing stuff. We don't want to just like oversell and say things and then it turns out it doesn't work, because then that would just make us look incompetent. So But yeah, so it's going to be high revisit time, very high revisit time, and very high resolution.
But still optical data, or
optical,
also
yes.
hyperspectral? No.
Optical data, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, I assume it's beyond DAF size satellites we are talking about here.
Naturally so, yes. I mean, if you look at, I would probably compare it to SkySat, just simply because it's, it's in that category of satellites. Yeah, I think we would get an innovation prize if we could really pack all that stuff into a DAF, but maybe one day.
There's optics and physics, and you really can't mess it up and put it in a shoebox and say,
exactly. Hey, so there are limitations.
Sub 30 centimeter from 200 kilometer altitude.
Yeah.
However, I don't want to dig into the secrets, even so I would love to. But there's another event coming up next week, as we all know, the IAC, and I'm quite sure you guys are going there. Is there anything particular we can expect you to announce, to do at IAC, or you're just around and...
Yeah, I think it's, we're not probably going to be announcing anything new, simply because we just had Explore. So we would be very crazy if we could come up with something within a week. But we have a big delegation going. So our co-founder and chief strategy officer, Robbie Schingler, is going. And then we have about, I think, 7 of us that are coming, and we're speaking in various panels. Robbie is going to be speaking at an industry panel. We are moderating things. We're organizing some lunches and social events, and we're going to have a lot of meetings, because we want to, the best thing about these big events is that everybody's there. So you can get, almost everybody's there.
Okay, it hurts already. So, okay.
But you can get a lot of work done within that week, a lot more than you would get in a month or two trying to chase people, through emails, get replies. You can just meet with them, sit down and talk. And I think this is the biggest value. So we're going to meet have meetings with a lot of our partners and customers and potential customers, potential partners, and just to talk business. So this is very, very exciting.
It's a wonderful transfer into my next question. So the title, as mentioned before, of our talk is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Let's talk about the industry cooperation. I mean, it sounds like a very idealistic topic. And when we announced it, we got some really controversial feedback on social media about it as well. So maybe you share your thoughts, what you guys envision when you say working together.
Yeah.
I mean, besides selling data, what is obviously one of the business cases, yeah?
Yeah. Good question. And if we're steering controversy, we are disruptive, we are about disruption and kind of pushing an envelope a little bit. I think it's, Planet is a bit of a different company, simply because we're mission driven. So, and this is not like just, blah, blah. This is a fact. So we're actually joining the stock exchange market as a so-called PBC, public benefit corporation, where we actually have to have a mission. It's very rare. There's only a few companies in the world that did that, because it's much more difficult for the company. We will not only be responsible to our shareholders with financial, let's say, success, but also that we adhere to our mission. So we state our mission, and we have to really make sure that our work checks the boxes of whatever our mission is. So we cannot just deviate and just focus on simply making money. So we look at the big picture, and our big picture is this planet Earth, and we want to make sure that it's sustainable and that we can live, as cheesy as it sounds, happily ever after on it, And we know that right now there's a lot of problems that our house is facing, our home. biodiversity, we're killing biodiversity. I mean, in a terrible, terrible way and extremely fast way. The climate change is now, is obvious. I think, you have very little questioning that anymore. There are all these environmental challenges, all these, weather phenomena, and we simply need to get together to tackle it. Nobody's going to do it alone, So this has nothing to do with borders. This has nothing to do with personal interests and agendas. It has to do with our future and our existence. And I think it's the first time a situation like that in the world where we're facing this. And I think COVID was a very good. I mean, COVID was not a good, but don't quote me on that.
COVID and good in one sentence.
Yeah, don't put that on Twitter. She said COVID was good. No, but I would say it was a very good example of how the world just changed and came together very, very quickly because it had to adjust, right? So we were more in the confinement. We stopped going out. We start using masks. Not everybody loved it. A lot of people hated it, but all in all, majority did it, and we really changed our ways of working, through this virtual work, etc. So it shows that human nature is really, we can adopt. If there's an emergency, we can adopt. And I think we need to look at those environmental issues like an emergency, which a lot of us don't think because we know it's there, we know it's bad, but it's, it's going to take decades or whatever. And I think what we need to do, we need to start thinking together. So going back to your questions, how do we, where do we compete and where do we cooperate? Well, I think obviously all of us have to make money. So does Planet. This is an expensive business and we can't go bankrupt, especially when we go public. So it's not about, being fiscally irresponsible, but about everybody being complementing to each other in the areas where we can. And I think we still can, I think the market is still not saturated. So there are companies that are extremely good at X and there are companies that are extremely good at Y. Let's stick at what we're very good at and combine these forces and try to tackle these issues. So this kind of fusion program that I was telling you, product, is an example of that. This is we actually are proving that combination of Planet data and Sentinel data is really an amazing tool and the right answer rather than just working separately. So obviously, is this going to be easy and everybody's going to jump on board? Of course not. I
mean, Sentinel is not a competitor. I mean, these are free data from the European Commission. So do you have examples for us and our audience where you work with competitors, how that can look like? So in a more concrete way, because
absolutely.
Sentinel is a no-brainer.
Yeah, but it's not. This is where I'm going to challenge you a little bit, because Sentinel, for instance, and we as a, not like semi-European, everybody's questioning, where we're from. We obviously have a Berlin base, European headquarters with, around 150 people working in Europe, et cetera, our mission control, but it's never enough, right? And a lot of people say, you're not really European, you're American. And often the institutions and ESA, whatever, say the same thing. They see us as the competitor. And they would like to, for instance, they want to promote their data only, right? Often, not everybody, but that was the original kind of, the European autonomy. Let's just promote European data, use European data. But European data is not enough. Our data is not enough alone. No data is alone. And for us to actually make these changes, we need these institutions and these governments actually to be our customers. This is, like I said, this business is expensive. So if they're going to buy our data, and if they're going to combine it with Sentinel, that's when we can survive and we can also do something good together. So there is the competition between public and private. And I think we want to show that the governments and industry have to work together on this. So instead of EU or ESA, for instance, developing new satellites that are going to compete with ours, let us do our job. They should do what they're good at, and let's combine the forces. You know what I mean? So this is what I talk about. Competition. And when it comes to industry, obviously this is a little bit more tricky, and this is why I'm also having this conversation, because we can collaborate. You've mentioned ISI, for instance. They have a capability that we don't. It makes sense for us to work together on things. And actually maybe in the future, and I'm just, this is not something that we're doing now, but like when I'm talking about data fusion, not using just Sentinel-1, but maybe also ISI, working together on things. But also with other optical competitors. We have done projects and initiatives with Airbus in the past, where they had a capability and we had a capability, and the combination of it was what the customer wanted. So I think but again, it's not easy, but I think I'm just trying to kind of preach to the world to say, open your mind to it, and we can, compete in some areas. When you look at defense, security, yeah, that's competition clear, but like when we look at climate, environment, and biodiversity, like we just need to work together if we really want to make an impact.
I mean, I know that my next question is a super common question, and you've been asked this question a gazillion times. So, but what can Earth observation do in the green transition? Is it just monitoring, or is there something else we might miss? And there's one, and I'm waving in the question from Geoffrey Smith. Now, will there be an opportunity for non-methane mapping applications once Carbon Mapper is in operations? I don't know if that fits together, but I think it sounds like that.
Yeah. Jeff is always asking difficult questions, I know. But Jeff, I'll get to your question in just a second. What we can do, I mean, we can do a lot, and this is, so we have done a lot of studies on this. For instance, we look at, and there was also, I saw a question in Q&A on sustainable development goals. And there have been studies, clear studies, that we can help 14 out of the 17 SDGs. So it's pretty much all of them. And obviously we're not the golden bullet that we're going to solve all the problems, but we're definitely part of the answer. So our data can really help 14 out of those 17 SDGs. And this is important. Why? Because, SDGs, the deadline, let's say, is 2030, right? And in order to know if we've met those goals, if we're successful, we have to measure them. Mm-hmm. And right now, on 20% of those goals, of the variables, indicators, 20% of those we're not measuring at all. 80% of those we're measuring, and the rest we don't even know. So, so the 20% we know we're not on track, 8% we know we are on track, and the rest we have no idea because we're not measuring it. This is where we come in. This is where we can help. We always say you can fix what you can't see. We can really help with that. Anything. We're also vis-a-vis the European Green Deal. We have identified the priorities of the European Green Deal, and we look where Earth observation can help, be it the forestry, forest management, farm to fork, sustainable agriculture, monitoring of coasts and the waters, and sustainable fisheries. And there's a lot. And it's not just companies like Planet that are going to do this. We need this strong downstream ecosystem that is actually going to turn this data into something useful, because nobody cares about data. They want solutions. They want information. So we need these companies, to turn our data into something useful, into answers. And again, working together,
Absolutely.
The Carbon Mapper question. I didn't get to Jeff. Yes, sorry. Jeff, unfortunately, I'm not able to give you an answer because I simply don't know. I am not as in the loop on Carbon Mapper as I should be. So there's definitely going to be a methane and carbon monitoring of the hotspots, of the specific hotspots that it's, but I don't know if there's going to be more than that in terms of like non-methane monitoring, probably, but I will have to get back to you on that.
Great. Before we come to the remaining questions from the audience, there's one that is quite difficult for me to to ask, because on one hand side, I love what you guys are doing. I love the data that are provided, but that come for a price. And that price is you put more satellites up. So, and if we talk about sustainability, I mean, we can't avoid sustainability in space. I mean, that's part of it. And I don't want to talk about debris, but just the pure management, space traffic management. So how do you just judge this entire topic? I mean, you are by far I think the largest operator of Earth observation satellites. And I mean, as Elon now puts his stuff up, I mean, nobody can compete in terms of numbers anymore. But I think you are on 300-ish satellites or so, if I'm right.
Yeah, it's. I mean, we've launched way above 400 satellites. In operations now, we have around 200. Yeah, this is a very good question. And as you, I think as you know, that I did my PhD on this. So this is a very big question for me, and like something that is dear to me, but also to Planet co-founders. You know, we care about sustainability not just on Earth, but also in space. And we want to make sure that we as humans don't do the same mess in space that we did on Earth, although we are kind of doing that a little bit. So obviously mega constellations are a threat, or could be potentially a threat. ITU, when this kind of idea of mega constellations came about a few years ago, I would say maybe like 8 years ago or something, ITU actually was saying that they don't consider small sats or CubeSats as satellites, but as debris. They have changed their mind a little bit, but also, you know, you have a lot of small entities, small countries, universities that are just going to launch a random satellite and lose contact with it, you know, 5 minutes later, and nobody knows what it is or what's happening to it. So we really wanted to act like a responsible space actor from the very beginning, and we want to kind of be a model on how to do this properly. So we are, first of all, collaborating with all the regulators, but also in various international initiatives on space traffic management. And as you know, there's unfortunately no standard yet, or rules of the road or norms of behavior. I mean, there are lots of indications, but still nothing that is really enforceable. So, but we are part of, you know, sustainability ratings and all kinds of different initiatives on the UN level, WEF level, kind of multilateral level where we participate. What we do with our satellites, doves are easy, right? Because doves are low. They're 500 kilometers and they're small. So due to atmospheric drag, they're naturally just come down and then they burn in atmosphere. So their lifespan is 3 to 4 years and they're out. So that's easy. With the bigger ones like SkySats and eventually Pelican and Rapid Eye, actually, this is what we're doing with Rapid Eye now because they're bigger satellites. And we have actually put them out of business, not because they were no longer working, but because we just didn't want to crowd the space anymore, since doves were kind of doing the same thing. So we are decommissioning them and bringing them back. Of course, these operations take time, but that's what we're doing. And of course, we're big supporters of these sort of initiatives where these sort of norms are kind of obvious and everybody does it, and they do it in a responsible way, because collisions, it's not something that anybody wants, because it's not only that it's bad for space environment, but it's bad for business. You know, you're losing your assets that are worth a lot of money, so nobody wants it.
That's such an interesting point you just mentioned, because now the entire sustainability debate goes into the business, or is connected with the business, and people we talk to say, oh, you know, the people with the companies with the biggest business will work on that massively. Where I say, hey, that sounds so wrong for me. Yeah, I mean, that's mess it up and then think about it later. That's a very human behavior. I'm sorry. I mean, I shouldn't say that as an independent moderator, but
no, but
it really.
I see what you mean. I think part of it is that the business is it kind of took charge of it just because governments are too slow. and they have not been able to come up to any agreement. And then businesses start putting assets there that cost a lot of money. This is kind of how Space Data Association was born. You know, they're like, okay, governments are not helping, so let's start talking to each other. And it started with telecom operators, but then it has really grown to the point where not only companies like Planet are part of it, but NASA is part of it. DoD is part of it. They joined this private initiative because it was working. So sometimes, you know, if you feel like it's like, you know, you live in a building, you own an apartment, but nobody's cleaning the staircase. You know, sometimes you're just gonna go and clean it yourself.
Yeah. No, right. And nice one. I would like to take the questions here from the floor. First of all, Mark, because it fits perfectly in what you just said. How can we, Mark Meyer from Cologne, so how can we promote space for the SDGs at the upcoming COP26 and so on? And I mean, he's looking forward to, or looking into the next big event that comes up then in Glasgow, I think in November. Are you guys part of it? I mean, you have an operation in Glasgow as well.
We are.
Of course.
We're having both of our co-founders going. We're doing a big outreach. So the thing is, you got to do outreach and you got to do awareness raising among governments, among the international organizations, among think tanks. And we've been doing that a lot. So we've been working on. So first of all, we did, you know, there's a study that I told you on the 14 out of 17 the SDGs that can be helped with EO, because then we have to present this to these decision makers. A lot of times they simply just don't know, you know. Mm-hmm. So you have to tell them, you know, this is how we can help. This is a very concrete way. They want concrete answers. And then we take this message and we evangelize. So we're also going to COP. We're speaking with a lot of governments. We're speaking with the EU. We're speaking with ESA. We're speaking with the UN. At the COP, we're going to have several events demonstrating how satellites are helping. And also we're going to have a lot of meetings with a lot of, you know, officials to make sure that they get the message. So it's hard work. And again, I think everybody should do part of it.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. We have our next Space Café Scotland, and we'll talk about it later on during COP26. And we will have the wonderful Greg Clark talking about it. And I mean, he's a big advocate for sustainability.
Yeah, absolutely.
As
awesome.
Well. So the last question, I think we have 2 more minutes. So also from Jeff, there are no magic bullets. Yep, we know about that. So fusion is a great example, and the whole EO sector should work to see which ingredients are required to make the right decision for the problems.
I agree.
Some comments from you.
No, he pretty much said it. I think it's like all of us, you know, everybody, it's just like, let's look at it like a big puzzle, you know, we all put our pieces into it and trying to make something out of it. So there's no magic bullet, but we can do something together for sure. You got to be optimistic.
As your answer was so short, so I want to take the one from Nana because she's picking up on your staircase cleaning example. So how do we ensure the businesses will continue cleaning the stair when it is more profitable to continue launching without the capabilities to clean up, especially when Planet has shareholders? To answer it, I think,
I mean,
you talked about it earlier already, but
right. So I think it's a good question. I think it's cleaning up the space. So this is a kind of the debris issue. It's a whole another topic, right? Because you need the technology, you need financing for it, whatever. But what we can do as operators, so Planet definitely is doing that, is act responsibly from the start. So we want to make sure that we don't leave any mess behind and that we communicate with other operators so that we avoid collisions and stuff. So I think everybody should be doing that. And so this is what we're going to be doing. We're not going to launch more satellites just for launching more satellites. So for instance, people are asking us if we're going to launch more doves. Of course, we're launching doves all the time, but only to replace the current doves. Like the constellation is full, there's no point for more. If we're going to do more satellites, it's going to be different constellations doing different things. But it's very calculated where they're going to be and why. But it's not about the numbers. It's about quality of data that comes from these satellites. So, if we can do more with less, that's even better. But as you know, again, physics, require certain, and the Earth rotation, et cetera, require of certain numbers. But and it is in the interest of like I said earlier, of the operators to be responsible, because you can lose your assets. So yes, we are responsible to our shareholders. We're going to launch these satellites. If they're going to crash, this is a huge loss for us. So it's not in our interest to operate in a trashy environment, a dirty environment. And we can also be hit by our own debris. So we might cause debris, and then like later another satellite comes, it's going to be hit by, so it's like a tragedy of the commons, everybody has to play their part.
That's right. As we are sticking to our 33 minutes, I'm afraid we have to come to an end. Even so, it's always a great pleasure.
I'm only getting started.
Yeah, I know. I was afraid of that sentence. Be assured, we will continue following Earth observation, your work in further space cafes, web talks in our magazine. I mean, we try to do a holistic approach to cover it all, also the sustainability aspect, where we had, I think, last week a wonderful panel with Moriba Vox Populi, talking about the cultural aspect. So what's coming up on our end? So on Thursday this week, we have by our friends of Powering Space, another lunch and learn. And on Friday this week, we're very proud to have another Space Café Germany with our next German astronaut, Matthias Maurer. So we talked with him live and had a great opportunity last week to capture an interview with him. And we will have live in the studio Reinhard Ewald, also one of our German astronauts at Space Café Germany, will be then in German. But I mean, that's for us, it's a super highlight to have talked with Matthias so close to his flight to the ISS, I think end of next week. Next week, we will report live, even we are not there on stage, from the IAC. And I will talk, or I have a talk on my 33 minutes with Remco Timmermans, who covers that. Then on the 4th of November, as mentioned before, we have our next Space Café Scotland by Angela Mattis with the wonderful Craig Clark. All events are going to be online on Eventbrite, and as always, we would like to hear your feedback. So please check in with us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. Don't forget to sign up for our daily or bi-weekly newsletters. And if you like to treat yourself with something special, become a Space Watcher. Your support is needed. To help us, take your credit card and visit our fan shop at shop.SpaceWatch.Global. It can't be easier. And thank you very much for your interest today. And thank you again, Planet, for your support of the event today. And my special thanks go to Agnieszka for this inspiring, engaging talk and being my guest. And thanks again for this entire team behind the scenes doing their great job, or their seamless job, week by week. Again, I hope you all will stay safe and healthy, and thanks for joining us. Hope to see you next week. In the meantime, visit our website and follow us on social media. And don't forget, become a Space Watcher.
Thank you for hosting. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Ciao, Agnieszka.